Hey everyone, welcome back to my Taylor Talks channel. Make sure that you guys click that like and subscribe button on the lower right hand corner. Now today I want to talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but not just the MCU, the actors inside of the MCU. I've been seeing a lot of articles lately pop up in my feed saying, did the MCU help or hinder its actors' careers? Did the MCU benefit off of the actors? Did the actors benefit off of, the MCU? Which one came out better? Which one came out worse out of all the MCU characters? And so I just wanted to kind of do a deep dive into it. Did a little research and wanted to see for myself if the MCU actually helped or hurt people's careers. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Now, there are a slew of actors in the MCU now. In fact, a lot of actors want to be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I'm just going to focus on the original Avengers, the 5 actors and actresses, which are, of course, RDJ, Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, Mark Ruffalo, Renner, and Chris Hemsworth. Those were the 5 that basically made the MCU really skyrocket into the big conglomerate that it is today. Now, these 5 actors carried the MCU. I mean, whenever we actually saw an MCU movie come out from 2008 until maybe 2019, it was basically just these 5. When people came to the movie theaters, they wanted to see either Iron Man or Captain America or Black Widow, Thor, you name it. They wanted to see these actors portray their characters. So they're pretty much responsible for a lot of the success at the beginning of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And so they basically carry this franchise. What I wanted to know, and what a lot of people wanted to know, is they carry the franchise in the MCU. Do they carry any franchises outside of the MCU? Or is their star power only efficient inside the MCU? I wanted to find that out. So I want to start with Robert Downey Jr. Tony Stark himself, Iron Man, he basically started the MCU in 2008. So after he started Iron Man, he did go on to play the title character of Sherlock Holmes in 2009. And the movie was so good and his acting was so good that he actually earned him a second Golden Globe Award. And then they got a sequel 2 years later, Sherlock Holmes, A Game of Shadows. So that was a widely successful, franchise that RDJ picked up. And there's even talks that they're going to make a 3rd movie. So in my mind at the moment, I was like, he carried another franchise outside the MCU. That's great. But then I looked at the dates. It was 2011 when the last movie came out for Sherlock Holmes. I'm searching. I don't find any other franchises that he took on outside of the MCU and outside of Sherlock Holmes. In fact, the other big movie that he was in that caught a lot of buzz was Dolittle, and it actually turned out to be a box office disappointment. He played the title character of Dolittle, and this is actually the 2nd film that he produced from his own production company called Team Downey with his wife. So for the past, I want to say maybe 10 years, it's just been the MCU and Sherlock Holmes. Now, next, I want to move on to Chris Evans. Now, we all know him as, of course, Captain America. He's been in so many MCU movies. Now, he first played Captain America in 2011. Now, since then, he's been in a lot of critically acclaimed movies and shows like Knives Out. He's been on Broadway with The Lobby Hero, which was his Broadway debut. He was really excited about that. He even had his own Apple TV Plus miniseries, Defending Jacob, which came out with good reviews. So Chris Evans, he's been out and about outside of playing Captain America. Now, as far as leading another franchise out of the MCU, not so much. Could be in the future, but as of right now, we just haven't seen anything like that. Now, I want to move on to Mark Ruffalo. He was introduced in the MCU in 2012 with the Avengers movie. He plays, of course, the Hulk. Now, similar to Chris Evans, he has gone on to star in critically acclaimed movies, TV shows, etc. So he has been working outside the MCU on good shows. Just recently, he started a miniseries, I Know This Much Is True, and he won an Emmy for that. And then he also starred in another TV drama, The Normal Heart, and he also won a Screen Actors Guild Award for that. So he's been playing in a lot of different shows that have been giving him different awards. Now, as far as starring and leading in a franchise outside the MCU, I haven't seen that as of yet again. Now, one thing I do want to note about Mark Ruffalo that we don't know for sure about the other two, like RDJ and Chris Evans, he is coming back to the MCU, or he still is in the MCU. He was in Shang-Chi, and he's also going to be in the upcoming Disney Plus series She-Hulk. So he is still in the MCU and collecting his money just outside the MCU, no other franchises. Now, on to the next, we're going to go to Jeremy Renner. Now, his is a bit different. Of course, he was introduced to the MCU in 2011 when he was in the Thor movie. And then, of course, he went on to play in the Avengers movie in 2012 as Hawkeye. He has even had his own Disney Plus show called Hawkeye in last year. So he's been doing pretty good in the MCU. Now, Jeremy Renner, he actually starred in a franchise outside of the MCU after he appeared in the MCU. Now, he wasn't the title character, but he was a supporting character in Mission Impossible. Ghost Protocol came out in 2011, and then he came back for Rogue Nation in 2015. Now, I do want to mention his movie, The Bourne Legacy. Now, the Bourne movies are pretty popular. They are a adaptation of a novel series called Jason Bourne. Those are the novel books for the series, and he actually starred in one of the movies for the franchise. Now, he did not come back, but it's good to note this because around the same time that he was in Mission Impossible and while he was doing the Avengers, he was also doing this movie, and he was really on it. I mean, you just saw Jeremy Renner everywhere. He was advertising these 3 different movies. He was on SNL. He was just everywhere. And even though he wasn't considered one of the top Avengers in the MCU, I think his outside work kind of compensated for that. So I did want to mention his Bourne Legacy role. But outside the MCU, I've only seen him in the Mission Impossible movies, but he has still been in a lot of different movies outside of the MCU. Next, I want to go to no other than Scarlett Johansson. Now, she joined the Marvel Cinematic Universe in 2010. Her character was introduced in Iron Man 2. And we all know that she recently got her Black Widow movie last year. So it took her about 10 years to get her own movie, but that's for another video. So outside of the MCU, Scarlett Johansson has been pretty successful. Now, as far as leading another franchise other than the MCU, I haven't seen any. But similar to Chris Evans and Mark Ruffalo, she has been a part of different movies and shows that have reached critical acclaim, to the height that she actually got 2 Oscar nominations. For Marriage Story and Jojo Rabbit. A lot of rumors and speculation is that her character of Black Widow is over when it comes to her playing Black Widow. But recent articles that came out said that she will be producing another MCU project. So she's technically still in the MCU, but outside the MCU, she has had a lot of success. Similar to her counterparts, next is Chris Hemsworth. We all know him as Thor. Now, he actually had his Marvel Cinematic Universe debut in 2011 as he played Thor. And since then, outside the MCU, he has been in notable movies, whether it's movie reboots or movies that are on Netflix. He's been in them, such as, Men in Black International and Ghostbusters. And he's actually been in one of my favorite movies from him, Extraction, off of Netflix, which is getting a second movie. I consider Extraction sort of a franchise, which that can be totally debatable. If you guys want to comment below if you guys think that Extraction is a franchise or not, I want to hear your opinions. But this is a movie that, he did in Netflix that had such good reviews that they wanted him back. And they're actually in production right now. So he has been in different roles outside of the MCU, similar to his counterparts. Now, before I talk about whether or not these actors actually benefited off the MCU or if it was a hindrance for them being in the MCU when it comes to their career, I do want to put up some notable people that are a part of the MCU but just weren't a part of, the original Avengers, the original 6. First, I want to shout out Chris Pratt. When I look at Chris Pratt, I think of a money-making machine. I think of a regular Joe, just like you and me, making these huge movies, leading these huge franchises, and just, staying kind of low-key with it. He took what he needed to take from the MCU, and he's still in the MCU. He's still, acting, and he's making the third Guardians of the Galaxy movie. But outside the MCU, he's leading his own franchises and they're doing amazing. Like for Chris Pratt, he did the Lego movies. Those had 2 movies that came out. Those came to critical acclaim and made tons of money. He also led Jurassic World as a franchise. The 3rd movie is coming out this year. And he's made a lot of money from that. And I feel like every time I wake up, we're hearing that he's going to play another title character, such as Garfield and Mario from Nintendo. I mean, he's just everywhere and he's just making a lot of money. And he is, in my humble opinion, a prime example of taking what he can from the MCU and turning that into something better. When you say Chris Pratt's name, for some people, they'll say, of course, you know, Guardians of the Galaxy, but a lot of other people will say Jurassic World or the Lego movie. There's a lot that you can say with his name. When you say Robert Downey Jr., you just hear Iron Man. And when you hear Chris Evans, you hear Captain America. And that's not a bad thing at all. I mean, let's be honest. These actors were paid tons of money to be in the MCU, whether they went on to star in other franchises or not. But when you think about Chris Pratt, he made his name in the MCU and he also made his name outside the MCU as well. So he really benefited off of all of this. I also want to mention Tom Holland. Now, he, of course, was introduced to the MCU in Marvel's Civil War movie as Spider-Man. Now, he finished his trilogy for Spider-Man, maybe his first trilogy, maybe they're going to get another one, we don't know. But when I think about Tom Holland, I do think about Spider-Man, but he also has this movie Uncharted that's going to come out. And Uncharted is based off of a huge video game franchise that came out in PlayStation a long time ago in 2007. In fact, this movie is the first movie that PlayStation Productions is producing and putting all their money behind. So they are really hoping that this Uncharted movie can turn into a franchise and Tom Holland can lead the way. A lot of people are saying, hey, can Tom Holland lead a franchise outside the MCU? I mean, he brought in billions of dollars in the MCU when he played Spider-Man. Let's be honest, he put people into seats in the movies because they wanted to see Tom Holland. They wanted to see him. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, the reason why Spider-Man made so much money is because we had 5 Spider-Man or 6 Spider-Man movies beforehand, and everybody knows Spider-Man, and we all want to see where, you know, the character goes. That's totally possible. But a lot of people are saying if the Uncharted movie can, you know, do really well, it'll show that Tom Holland is a leading man of a franchise outside of the MCU. So I wanted to mention Tom Holland as well. There's tons of different MCU characters and actors that I can mention in this video, but this video would probably be about 10 hours long. Now, the final verdict, in my humble opinion, I think that all the actors and actresses that I listed in this video do have star power outside the MCU. I think they had star power before. I think their star power was amplified because of the MCU. And outside the MCU now, they still have that same star power, if not more. You know, so will some of these actors reach the same level of star power that they had inside the MCU? That's debatable. Again, when you think of some of them like RDJ, you think of Iron Man, you think of Chris Evans, you think of Captain America. You know what I mean? And then when you get to Chris Pratt, you think about Guardians of the Galaxy, you think about Jurassic World, you think about a lot of different things. I think it all depends on the actor. I never want to pigeonhole actors or actresses in just one role because that could be detrimental. But let's just be honest, some of these actors are going to be solely known for their work in the MCU. And that's not a bad thing. You know, they can still go on to do bigger and better things. But for some of the actors, they're just going to be known most for their roles in the MCU versus others are going to be known for, of course, their roles in the MCU and other things. And again, that's not a good or bad thing. It's just how people view actors and actresses and their characters. And that's how I view them as well. I want to know what you guys think. Do you think there's a certain actor or actress that'll just solely be known for their contributions in the MCU? Do you think that some actors and actresses only have star power because of the MCU and that they won't reach that certain level of success again in the future? I don't know what you guys think. Make sure to like and subscribe to this video to get it circulated. Make sure to comment below your thoughts. I really want to know. And as I always say, stay safe. See ya.